In this video, I want to take a look at the parable of the prodigal son. When many churches speak about the prodigal son, they talk about how great God's love is, that the son that wandered off came home. A lot of people focus on that part, but let's focus on another part. When that son of that household wanted to leave, what did the father do? The father gave him what he wanted and what he needed to leave. That son wanted to have his part of the inheritance so that he could leave. Hold on a minute. You get an inheritance when the one that signs the will dies, right? If you inherited a farm from your grandfather, it's after your grandfather passed away that the farm becomes yours. That's how it goes with a will. That's how it goes with a testament. You can't demand an inheritance while someone is still alive. That's actually saying that you wish the individual didn't even exist. So when this son of this household had this dishonorable, narcissistic attitude, what did the father do? The father did not hate on the son. He did not turn on the son. He did not seek revenge on the son. What he did was saying, okay, you want your part, so the father divided the prosperity, gave him his part that he would receive in the future, and he gave him what was necessary for him to go his way. As you know the rest of the story, that son went and, well, he wasted everything, because that's what people with narcissistic attitudes do. Because they're so self-focused, they don't look at the bigger picture, so they end up wasting stuff, and the people that they invested in often drop them. So in this case, the prodigal son reaped what he had sown. He sown dishonor towards his own father, who was honorable towards him, and this crime cashed out with him. The same happened to him in a far worse state, because he ended up as a slave being used by others, and even the pigs received better meals than he did. So when he hit rock bottom, that son realized, what have I done? And he repented, and he realized, okay, I was dishonorable towards my father. I can go back, but I can't expect the same place I had before. So he was willing to become as a slave unto his father. At least he would be better off, because he realized, in my father's house is bread to spare. So there in the world, he had to envy what the swine were eating, while in his father's house there was abundance everywhere. Even the slaves were living a happy and abundant life. Now look, the parable of the prodigal son, of course, is about people becoming born again, finding Christ and all of that. But I want to focus on the first part, because Christ's parables are multidimensional. There's a lot of hidden knowledge hidden in those parables. Why didn't the father fight to convince the son to stay? That's what you would do naturally when someone's about to make decisions that are out of line. And there's nothing wrong with that either. That shows you're interested in someone's well-being. But look at this. That son was only focused on himself. He was narcissistic. He wanted to flee things, even though it was nothing to flee from, because he was provided for. And look, I'm not picking on that son that left in that parable. I'm just pointing out something to you here. There was something with that son that wasn't right. And that thing that wasn't right in him, he didn't want to address it. So he just wanted to flee. So he projected what was on it, the inside that wasn't right, onto his father. And listen to what I'm saying here. There are people that will project whatever dysfunction they carry with them onto you. You didn't do them any dirty. You didn't steal from them. You didn't exploit them. You didn't abuse them in any way. But for some reason, they turn on you. What's going on? There's something they don't want to face. There's something they don't want to look a solution for. So they flee from it. And because it's something internal, they will carry it with them wherever they are. So the way they can avoid dealing with what they're carrying with them is by dumping it on someone else. Okay? So this son turned against his own father. So the father was wise enough to realize, you know what? It's better for this son to leave this household, or else he will bring harm on everyone around here. And that father had another son. And that father also had servants that were loyal unto him. So he considered the well-being of the community that he presided over and realized, okay, this individual who happens to be my son is out of line, he's narcissistic, and he carries danger with him, and I can't afford to allow him to endanger everyone around here because he doesn't want to face something. So you know what? He wants to leave. I don't have to kick him out, so he wants to leave. Okay, I'll assist him in leaving, even though it's not my will, even though it's not what I want. This is what he insists on. I'll give him. I'll rather have him gone than to have his whole household ruined. And that's being practical, because that father was the head of a community, also had responsibilities and obligations towards the rest of the community. So he had obligations towards that son also, but that son also had obligations towards him. But that son didn't want to deal with any obligations, just wanted to flee. So look at this. In other parables, the parable of the lost coin, the parable of the lost sheep, when it came to the lost sheep, the shepherd left the 99 behind and went and looked for the sheep. When it came to the coin, the woman turned the whole house upside down to find that one coin. But when it came to that son, the father, in the parable, realized it's better for the son to go. Now look, this does not mean that that father did not love the son. It doesn't mean he wasn't interested in the son's well-being. That's not the case. It was the son who was defect and who persisted in this defect. So it was the son that became a danger. Now, let's go to Abraham. When the Most High called Abraham, the Most High told them, leave your household behind, leave your family behind, and go to a land I will show you. So Abraham and his wife left. Who came with him? Lot. Now, Abraham had his own people that followed him, who also were into following God. But Lot and his crowd were not into following God. They were into seeking gain. Now, Lot was a believer, but he had a worldly mindset. So he functioned as worldly people, even though he was a believer. So listen to what I'm saying here. Just because someone is a fellow believer doesn't automatically mean you should be yoked with them. We shouldn't be unequally yoked with unbelievers, we know that. But there are even some believers we shouldn't be yoked with. That relates to believers that aren't renewed in their mind, that aren't focused on Christ. Now, Lot was such a believer. And this worldly attitude, this narcissistic attitude of Lot, caused Abraham a lot of harm. I've spoken about this before. When Abraham's wife, Sarah, was taken into Pharaoh's harem, Lot and his men did not intervene. They didn't do anything. So Lot was there, but Lot was not beneficial unto Abraham. Okay? When there was a famine, it's because there was a famine in Canaan that Abraham went to Egypt for bread. Lot and his people had no solution whatsoever. And when Abraham, by the assistance of the Holy Spirit, overcame what was happening in Egypt, Abraham, after he left Egypt, was rich, he was wealthy. And Lot benefited from Abraham's anointing. Because Lot and his men were there also, and they also became wealthy and rich. Well, what happened? The crowd that was with Lot turned on Abraham's men and began to fight. So Abraham eventually realized, you know what, Lot, this needs to stop. You choose where you want to go, I'll give in to it. Even though Abraham was an older man, so you would expect him to make a decision, but Lot decided, there's Sodom. Sodom is quite at ease. I want to go there. So Lot and his crowd went to Sodom. Now, what happened here is that I'm not blaming Abraham, okay, because I'm not looking down on him. Absolutely not. But the Most High knew why the Most High told them, leave everyone behind. Lot came after him. Now, Abraham was not negative-minded. Absolutely not. That's why Abraham did not send Lot away, because Lot appeared to be interested in God's plan, even though Lot wasn't. Isn't it weird that you have believers after they're not interested in God's will because they're so stuck with what the world has to offer? So there are even believers you need to watch out with, some of them. Okay? So, Abraham thought, okay, Lot is interested. Lot may also have a promise that God gave unto him. None of it was true. Lot was worldly minded. And eventually, Lot ended up being kidnapped. Because there was this war going on where some king invaded Sodom and kidnapped the people. So now Abraham, who was a kinsman of Lot, had his obligation to rescue Lot. So Abraham now had to be involved in a war. And eventually Abraham won the conflict and Lot was returned home. But even then, Lot didn't want to forfeit his worldly attitude. It's only when it became obvious that those people from Sodom were not open to change, and it's when the people of Sodom turned on Lot, that Lot realized, okay, I need to go. And meanwhile, Abraham was praying on Lot's behalf. So when you look at it carefully, Lot came with Abraham, but Lot was not centered on Christ or on Christ's promises. So Lot didn't bring any solutions. He didn't bring any insight. Lot didn't even assist Abraham when Abraham was going through trials and tribulations. Lot, even Lot moved away. But this man, he caused Abraham to be involved in a war Abraham shouldn't have been involved in. So when you look at it carefully, Lot cost Abraham way too much. Lot carried that weight. Lot had a crowd that followed him that Lot didn't want to let go of. And because Lot didn't want to let go of that crowd kept following and haunting Lot. And because Lot was haunted and he didn't want to seek deliverance, he became a liability unto Abraham. So Lot himself was that weight unto Abraham, because Lot himself didn't want to be free from that weight that he had. So listen to this. There are people that don't want deliverance because they don't want to go through it. They don't want to go through deliverance. They don't want to go through renewing their mind or any of that. They just want to be relieved. There are even believers like this. Well, when someone is an unbeliever or a believer, when they are in relief seeking, they're not into long-term solutions, they are holding on to that weight. And such an individual will become a dead weight onto you. They will cause unnecessary conflict, unnecessary suffering. They will bring unnecessary danger onto you. Now listen to what I'm saying here. Christ, the Lord himself, said, I sent you as sheep amongst wolves. So be wise as serpents and innocent as doves. So Christ is sending us in dangerous territory. He is placing us amongst predators, amongst narcissists, amongst psychopaths. He's putting us amongst enablers of evil. Christ is doing it. Why? Because Christ wants to demonstrate his glory. So Christ, for his glory's sake, will put us amongst all the contention of the world so that we will overcome by operating in his strength. That's what God is doing. Okay? It's not you that chose to be amongst all the contention. God placed you there. So the only yoke you should carry is to walk by faith. And that yoke is easy because the strength of Christ is not compared to the dangers you've placed within. Let me say there's dangers around you. You've been placed within that danger, within society, and you overcome by Christ's strength. And Christ's strength overrules and dominates all the dangers around you. However, it's not God's plan for you to carry that weight. It's not. Okay? And sometimes you don't realize that certain individuals around you are that weight. Now understand the following. Someone that's holding on to that weight, or better said, someone that's not into long-term solutions, they have no interest in anything. To be interested in something means that you're involved with something that's outside of yourself. Something that doesn't refer onto you. That's what it means to be interested in something. Now, people that don't want long-term solutions, they have no interest whatsoever. They're not interested in anyone nor anything. They just want relief, and they want to extend this relief. So they're operating in toxic self-reference. So they have no interest in anything nor anyone. They have to fake interest, or else people will not receive them, but they have no interest in anything. So, I've spoken about Abraham. Now I'm going to speak about David. David had no good contact with his relatives because most of his siblings didn't accept that he was chosen and selected by God. His own father didn't even want to acknowledge him as his son when the prophet came. So David had no good relationship with his father nor with his other relatives. And when Saul turned on David, because Saul was demon-possessed, remember. When Saul became homicidal and later even genocidal, he turned on David. None of his relatives assisted him. Okay? Now, David had a best friend called Jonathan. Jonathan was the son of King Saul. And Saul was the one that turned on David and wanted to kill David. Okay? What happened was that Saul even turned on his own son. It was the military that saved Jonathan from being killed by Saul. What happened? Jonathan, instead of facing that his father was demon-possessed and his father was dangerous, he held on to the tradition of honoring a mother and father, even though he shouldn't have honored Saul at all. What Jonathan should have done was, as the heir to the throne, he should have told the military, you see that my father wanted to kill me, his heir is not in his right mind, you guys have to save me. Let's put him down, make me king until, or make me the regent in his place. Jonathan, as the heir to the throne, should have taken his collective responsibility towards the Israelite people to guard the people against his father. He should have both considered his own safety and the safety of the people, because he was the next in line to become king. And as a future leader, he should have considered the well-being of his people. Instead, Jonathan kept hanging around Saul. And eventually, when Saul was attacked and Saul died, he was in a chariot with his father, so he died also. But this Jonathan, who was best friends with David, he enabled the predator that was after David. So how can you be friends with someone that enables harm on you? What? Now Jonathan was codependent. So Jonathan was a liability onto David. But David didn't see it in the beginning. It's later David realized that he could hang around this man. Let's go throughout Scripture. You'll find instances where some of the saints in the past didn't realize that some of the people were liabilities. Now listen to what I'm saying here. You need to lose that weight. Not every self-obsessed individual will admit that they have no interest in anything. Because if they would do that openly, they would lose supply, they would lose support, and they would be left with nothing. So many will fake interest just to keep you around. They want you around to benefit off of you, but they don't want to operate in their own prosperity. They want to benefit from your prosperity so that whenever resistance or violence comes against that prosperity, it will be you that will face the violence, not them. Yeah, folks like that. They don't want to have their own prosperity, because if they have their own prosperity, they'll need to face things themselves. No, they want to leech off of you so that when the violence comes, it will come at you and they just walk away to be relieved from the situation. You have folks like that. Some people are just I don't want to say stupid, but they have a stupid attitude. They're just very open with a narcissistic attitude, and that's why they lose friends, they lose everything. The self-absorbed individual that's a bit smarter gets along with other people, and you have a lot of them, but just because they get along and they behave well doesn't mean they are a blessing unto you. Listen to what I'm saying, believer. You need to lose that weight. And I found this illustration online. It's purple. And it's a good symbol for this video because the color purple is used by pagans to signify a hoax. Now you will have people around you that appear to be beneficial to you. They appear to be supportive of you, but it's really a scam by the paranormal. Satan is using them to weigh you down. You can't afford to carry that weight with you. Christ himself, he had 70 disciples. Okay? And he empowered them to cast out devils, to raise the dead, and all of that. So he had 70 disciples that received power from him, and they walked in the power. But when it came to his mission, when he compared himself to the bread of heaven, and people have to eat his flesh and drink his blood, he was talking in an effective way. It wasn't talking about literally people cannibalizing him, and Christ often spoke in figurative ways. So they were used to him speaking in figurative ways. But what Christ made plain there is that the focus ought to be on him, on his purpose. But many of those disciples that received power, they were focused on their own agenda. They were self-absorbed. So many of them became offended. They became upset when Christ told them that he had to be the focus. That they had to rely on him and his direction. So they left him. They found an excuse to leave him. Only 12 men remained. And those 12 men really wanted to be with them, but one of them was a traitor eventually. So Christ had actually 11 men that remained with him of the 70. Let's forget about Judas for a moment. So from 70, 11 remained. That means that 59 he had to lose. But when those 58 left, and there were only 12 behind, Christ even asked them, do you want to leave too? And Peter said, where should we go? You have words of eternal life. So those others, they forfeited the power Christ entrusted onto them. So they left the power because they couldn't manipulate it to serve their relief seeking. So those 58 people that left, they left on their own accord. They were dead weight. So Christ made no efforts to keep them around. Now look, when someone is upset and they are lowering contact, then it's natural for you to ask what's going on. There's nothing wrong with preserving healthy relationships. Listen what I said. There's nothing wrong with preserving healthy relationships. Okay? So when you have relationships with people, it's natural that you want to work things out, that you want solutions. But here's the thing. The other individual should also want solutions. It shouldn't only be you that wants a solution. It shouldn't only be you that makes the effort. If they expect a one-side traffic heading in their direction, that means it's time for them to leave. It's time for you to say goodbye to them. It shouldn't only be you that wants things to work out. It shouldn't only be you that wants to move forward. It shouldn't only be you that wants solutions. They should want solutions also. What I see around me is that many believers, because they've been conditioned by society, because those pagan churches are part of society, they've been conditioned to fight on behalf of relationships that are destroying them. Look, it doesn't matter if people want to remain with you. If people want to leave because they are self-obsessed, because seldom will people leave you because there's something wrong with you. Okay? If something's wrong with you, Healthy people will try to help you out. If that's not the case, you will lower contact. But often when people leave you, it's because they are projecting onto you. They don't want to face things. So them leaving is a benefit onto you. It's a blessing onto you. Okay? But there are also people that will stay with you, but for the wrong motives. In any case, when people are not into long-term solutions, they're not into life and abundance, why are they with you? If they leave because they're self-obsessed and eventually end up in a pit, you did not force them into that pit. That pit is a consequence of your own narcissistic attitude. That's not your fault, neither can they blame you. Even though many will blame you, but that's on them. Okay? But if people stay with you, but they're not into life and abundance, they're not even interested in solutions for themselves, especially not interested in long-term solutions, then why are they with you? Why? They are with you because they see benefits and they see that you are anointed and they want to benefit from the anointing. They're not into Christ, not into God's plan, because they're not even into solutions to begin with. They're into benefiting. They want benefits to flow towards them. They want a one-side traffic to them. That's what they want. But they don't want to be responsible with what they receive. They want to receive benefits. They want to receive the good. They want to receive good quality from others, in this case from you, but they don't want to be responsible with what they receive. So if you give them positive attention, after a while, that weight, that negative thinking that they have will still weigh on them. Instead of dealing with the negative weight, they will project it onto you and they will pretend as if you're stalking them, as if you are harassing them, even though that's not the case. So they don't want to be responsible with what they receive because they're not into solutions anyway. Why are they with you? They shouldn't even be with you. Why aren't they in the world seeking relief? Why aren't they diving into their addictions and all of that? Why are they with you? Don't fight to preserve a relationship God did not approve of. Let me say that one more time. Do not fight, or better said, don't even make effort to preserve a relationship God did not approve of. Okay? Lose that weight. That does not mean that you look down on other people. That doesn't mean that you are not concerned with other people. It doesn't mean that you're narcissistic. You're not narcissistic. They are. Because they don't want any solutions. They don't want to comply with justice. Yet they want to be with you. And when things get rough, or when they are called when they are called to do their parts, when they are called to honor their natural obligation towards you, now they can't. Now they have excuses. Now they have their reasons why they are opting out. You don't need such people. Whether they are staying with you or they're leaving you, you should lose both of them. If anyone that's not interested in long-term solutions, you should lose them as soon as possible. Because if you don't, then you have an asset of Satan with you. Do you remember in the New Testament when Christ informed the disciples that he will suffer a lot and that the evil will be killed and that he will raise from the dead? What did Peter say? Peter said, Lord, nothing bad will happen to you. Now, it's understandable. Peter didn't mean any harm. But Peter's mindset was a mindset that enabled Satan. That's why Christ called Peter, Satan, get behind me. Because let me say, you can read it yourself. That's quite intense what Christ did. But Christ looked at the bigger picture. Peter eventually repented. And Peter eventually forfeited that attitude. So Peter was just a slow learner. Okay? So Peter was, but at that moment, even though Peter didn't have any harm on Christ, in that moment, Peter's mindset was defective because it enabled Satan's agenda. So at that time, Christ had to treat him as a risk that had to be managed. Okay? He didn't cast Peter out because Peter was not a devil. Peter was not a bad individual, but he had this thinking that he needed to be freed from. Okay? So, which that weight do you need to lose? Okay? Agree with Christ.